Hi, little friend. Today I'm going to tell you a really amazing story. It's about a man who spent 40 days in the desert without eating anything or drinking any water. Do you think that's possible? Stay with me until the end and you'll find out how he did it. Shall we begin? Before I begin the story, let me tell you who our hero is. His name is Moses. But he's not a little baby anymore. Now he's an old man. He's 80 years old. That's very old. But God is preparing him for a very, very special mission. The most important mission of his life. Moses was tending his father-in-law's sheep in the desert. He lived a very peaceful life. But one day, something very strange happened. Moses saw something he had never seen before. There was a bush on fire. Do you know what a bush is? It's like a small tree full of dry branches. And that bush was completely on fire. But do you know what was strange? The fire burned and burned and burned, but the bush didn't disappear. It remained green. The fire wasn't burning the bush. Moses was very curious. He thought, what strange thing is this? I'll get closer to see. When Moses got close, a voice came out of the fire. It was the voice of God. God called out, Moses, Moses, take your sandals off your feet because this place is holy. Moses was very afraid. He quickly took off his sandals and covered his face. He was afraid to look at God. And then God began to speak. He said, Moses, I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. They are slaves. They are being mistreated. They are crying. And I will free them. I will take them out of Egypt and bring them to a very good land. A land full of delicious things. And do you know who I have chosen to do this? You, Moses. You will return to Egypt and bring my people out of there. Moses was scared. He said, but me? Who am I to go talk to Pharaoh? I can't speak properly. I stutter. Send someone else. But God replied, Moses, I will be with you. Don't be afraid. And to prove that it was real, God performed 3 miracles in front of Moses. First, God turned Moses' staff into a snake. Then he made Moses' hand sick and then healed it right away. He also turned water into blood. Moses saw all this and thought, okay, I'll go. So Moses returned to Egypt after 40 years away. He met with his brother Aaron. And together they went to speak to Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the king of Egypt. A very powerful king. Moses and Aaron arrived at his palace and said, Pharaoh, the God of Israel has sent word, let my people go. Pharaoh looked at them and started laughing. He said, who is this God that I should obey him? I don't know this God. Not only will I not let the people go, but now they will work even harder. Pharaoh was so angry that he made the Israelites' lives even more difficult. They had to make bricks. Before, they were given straw to make the bricks. But now Pharaoh ordered them to gather their own straw and make the same amount of bricks. It was impossible. The people were very sad. They were angry with Moses. They said, did you come here to help us or to make our lives worse? Moses was discouraged. But God said, calm down, Moses. Now you will see what I will do. And then something incredible began. God sent 10 plagues on Egypt. Do you know what plagues are? They are bad things that happen. And each plague was more impressive than the last. The first plague was this, all the water in Egypt turned to blood. The rivers, the wells, even the water stored in jars turned to blood. The fish died. The smell was horrible. No one could drink the water. But Pharaoh remained stubborn. He said, "I will not let the people go." The second plague was frogs. Lots and lots and lots of frogs. Millions of frogs invaded Egypt. Frogs in bed. Frogs in food. Frogs in the oven. Frogs jumping on people. There were so many frogs. Pharaoh begged Moses to take the frogs away. He promised to let the people go. But when the frogs disappeared, Pharaoh changed his mind again. The third plague was lice. The dust of the earth turned into lice, covering people and animals. How it itched! The fourth plague was flies. Lots of flies. Giant swarms of flies took over the whole of Egypt. Except for the region where the Israelites lived. There were no flies there. The fifth plague was a disease that killed all the livestock in Egypt. But the Israelites' livestock remained healthy. The sixth plague was skin sores. Painful sores covered the Egyptians. The seventh plague was a hailstorm. Giant ice stones fell from the sky, destroying crops and killing anyone who was outside. The eighth plague was locusts. Billions of locusts covered the sky like a dark cloud. They ate everything that was left of the crops. The ninth plague was darkness. For 3 whole days, Egypt was in such darkness that people couldn't even move. Only the Israelites' houses had light. But Pharaoh? He kept saying no. Then came the 10th and final plague. The saddest of all. God warned, "At midnight, every firstborn son in Egypt will die. From Pharaoh's son to the son of the prisoner in jail. And even the firstborn of the animals." But the Israelites would be protected. How? Each family had to take a lamb. Kill the lamb. Spread the lamb's blood on the door of the house. And when the angel of death passed by, he would see the blood and skip that house. That night became known as Passover. At exactly midnight, what God said happened. Pharaoh woke up to horrible cries coming from all over Egypt. His own son had died. Every Egyptian house was filled with weeping and sadness. Pharaoh finally broke down. He called Moses and Aaron in the middle of the night and shouted, "Leave! Leave now! Take your sheep, your cows, everything! Go away!" The Israelites ran away. There were 600,000 people, plus women and children. A lot of people. They left so quickly that there was no time for the bread to rise. That's why they took unleavened bread. And you know what else? The Egyptians gave them gold, silver, and clothes. Because the Egyptians wanted them to leave quickly. God guided the people through the desert. How did he guide them? Through a pillar of cloud during the day, and a pillar of fire at night. Like a divine GPS. They followed the cloud and the fire. They arrived at the edge of the Red Sea and camped there. The Red Sea is a huge sea. Impossible to cross. And suddenly, the people looked back and saw something scary. Dust rising on the horizon. It was the chariots of Egypt coming at full speed. Do you know what happened? Pharaoh repented. He thought, "I just let all my slaves escape. Who will work now?" And he took his whole army and ran after the Israelites. The people panicked. They shouted at Moses, "Did you bring us here to die? It would have been better to remain slaves than to die here." But Moses raised his hands and shouted, "Don't be afraid. Stand still and see what God will do. God will fight for you. God spoke to Moses, "Why are you shouting at me? Tell the people to march. And you? Lift up your staff. Stretch out your hand over the sea and divide the waters. The Israelites will cross the sea on dry land." Moses was surprised. Divide the sea? But he obeyed. Moses lifted up his staff. He stretched out his hand over the waters. And something incredible happened. The pillar of cloud that was in front of the people moved and went behind them. It stood between the Israelites and the Egyptians. On the Egyptian side, it became dark. They couldn't advance. On the Israelite side, there was light. And then, a strong east wind began to blow. The wind blew all night with such force that the waters began to divide. The water on the right rose up, forming a giant wall. The water on the left rose up, forming another giant wall. And in the middle, dry land. The Israelites couldn't believe their eyes. They began to cross. 600,000 people crossing in the middle of the sea, with walls of water on both sides. Imagine the scene. You can see fish swimming inside the walls of water. It's like being in a giant aquarium. But you're walking on dry ground. When dawn broke, the Egyptians finally saw where the Israelites had gone. And when they saw the dry path in the middle of the sea, they thought, "We're going to cross too." And they went in with all their chariots, all their horses, their entire army. But when they were in the middle of crossing, God made the wheels of the chariots lock up. The chariots began to slow down. The soldiers began to shout, "Let's flee from Israel. Their God is fighting for them against us." But it was too late. Moses, who had already crossed with all the people, stretched out his hand over the sea again. And the walls of water began to fall. The waters came back with full force. The water swallowed the chariots, the horses, the soldiers. Pharaoh's entire army was destroyed. Not a single soldier survived. On the other side of the sea, the Israelites saw the bodies of the soldiers being thrown onto the beach by the waves. They realized, "We are saved. We are free." And then there was a huge celebration. Moses and the people began to sing. Moses' sister, Miriam, took a tambourine and began to play. All the women took tambourines and danced. They sang songs praising God. But now comes the part about the desert. They traveled 3 days through the desert without finding water. When they finally found water, it was bitter. Impossible to drink. The people began to complain, "What now, Moses? Are we going to die of thirst?" Moses prayed to God. And God showed him a special tree. Moses threw the tree into the water and the water became sweet. A miracle. They continued their journey and camped at Elim. Elim was a place with 12 springs and 70 palm trees. Like an oasis. But when they left there and entered the desert again, the people began to complain again. "In Egypt, at least we ate well. We had meat. We had bread. Now we're going to starve to death in this desert." And God sent manna. What is manna? Early in the morning, when the dew evaporated, there was something white on the ground. Thin like frost. It looked like coriander seeds and tasted like honey cake. The people looked at it and asked, "What is this?" And Moses explained, "It is the bread that God has given you to eat." Each family gathered as much as they needed. There was one rule, gather only enough for one day. If you saved it for tomorrow, it would get bugs and smell bad. But on the 6th day of the week, they gathered twice as much. Because on Saturday, no manna would fall. God sent manna for 40 years. Every single day for 40 years. Except on Saturday. The people never went hungry again. God also sent quails. Huge flocks of birds flew low in the late afternoon. And the people caught them to eat meat. But the complaining didn't stop. They arrived at another place and there was no water again. The people were angry with Moses. "Give us water." Moses replied, "Why are you fighting with me? Why are you testing God?" But the people were so desperate that they even threatened to throw stones at Moses. Moses cried out to God. God replied, "Go to the rock. Strike the rock with your staff." Moses obeyed. He struck the rock, and water gushed out. Fresh water. Clean water. Enough for everyone and all the animals. 3 months after leaving Egypt, the people finally arrived at Mount Sinai, the most important mountain in history. This is where God will make a covenant with Israel. God spoke to Moses, "Prepare the people. They must wash their clothes. In 3 days, I will come down on Mount Sinai, and all the people will see." Early on the 3rd day, frightening things began to happen. Thunder exploded in the sky. Lightning flashed. A thick cloud covered the mountain. The sound of a super loud trumpet echoed, so loud that all the people trembled with fear. Mount Sinai was covered in smoke because God came down in fire. The smoke rose like smoke from a giant furnace. The whole mountain shook violently. And then, from the midst of the fire, smoke, and thunder, God spoke the 10 Commandments. God's voice was so powerful that the people begged, "Moses, you speak to us. Don't let God speak directly because we will die of fear." God gave the laws. Have no other gods. Do not make graven images. Do not misuse God's name. Remember the Sabbath day. Honor your father and mother. Do not kill. Do not be unfaithful. Do not steal. Do not lie. Do not covet what belongs to others. Then God called to Moses, "Come up here on the mountain because I will give you the stone tablets with the laws written by my own finger." Moses climbed the mountain and entered the cloud. He stayed up there with God for 40 days and 40 nights. Without eating anything. Without drinking anything. Just talking to God and receiving all the instructions. But down below, the people grew impatient. They thought, "Moses went up that mountain a long time ago and hasn't come back. Could he be dead? Let's make a god that we can see." They gathered all the gold they had. They melted it down and made a golden calf. And they began to worship the calf. They celebrated. They danced. They said, "This is the God who brought us out of Egypt." Up on the mountain, God was furious. He said to Moses, "Come down quickly. Your people have become corrupt. They have made a golden idol." But Moses interceded for the people. He said, "Lord, it was you who brought this people out of Egypt with great power. Forgive this people." And God forgave them. Moses came down the mountain carrying the 2 stone tablets written by the finger of God. When he got close to the camp and saw the golden calf and the people dancing, he got so angry that he threw the tablets on the ground and they broke. Moses took the golden calf. He burned it in the fire. He ground it into powder. He mixed it with water and made the people drink it. The next day, Moses went back up the mountain to intercede again. He prayed, "Oh, these people have committed such a great sin. But now, I beg you, forgive their sin." God replied, "Moses, I forgive them. Now go. Lead the people to the land I promised." God told Moses to make new stone tablets. Moses cut 2 tablets identical to the first ones and climbed the mountain again. Another 40 days and 40 nights without eating or drinking. God wrote the commandments again on the tablets. During those 40 days, something incredible happened. Moses saw the glory of God. When Moses came down for the second time, something supernatural happened. Moses' face was shining. His skin radiated light from having been in God's presence. The glow was so strong that the people were afraid to come near him. Moses had to wear a veil covering his face when he spoke to the people. And now the construction of the tabernacle began. The tabernacle was like a portable tent that would be God's home among the people. The people brought offerings: gold, silver, bronze, blue fabrics, purple fabrics, red fabrics, animal skins, wood, olive oil, spices, precious stones. They brought so much that Moses had to say, "Enough. Bring no more." When everything was ready, Moses set up the tabernacle. He put everything in its right place. He anointed everything with oil. He consecrated everything. And when he finished, something glorious happened. The cloud of God covered the tent. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The brightness was so intense that Moses couldn't even enter the tent. And from that day on, the cloud remained over the tabernacle. When the cloud rose, it was a sign for the people to travel. When the cloud stopped, it was a sign to camp. During the day it was a cloud. During the night it was fire. All the people of Israel could see God's presence with them. Now comes the most important part of the whole story. Do you know what the big lesson is? It's about obedience and God's presence. Moses spent 40 days on top of the mountain without food or water. That's impossible, naturally. A normal person dies in 3 days without water. But Moses wasn't alone. He was in God's presence. And when you're in God's presence, the impossible becomes possible. This story shows that God is faithful. He promised to free Israel from slavery, and he did it. He promised to take them to a good land, and he was taking them there. He promised to be with them, and he was with them through the cloud and the fire. God always keeps his promises. But it also shows that God wants obedience. The Israelites saw 10 plagues in Egypt. They saw the Red Sea part. They saw manna fall from heaven. They saw water come out of the rock. They saw Mount Sinai on fire with the presence of God. And yet they made a golden calf. The story of the tabernacle is also beautiful because it shows that God wants to live with his people. He doesn't want to stay far away in heaven. He wants to be close. That's why he had that tent made. And you know what? Today God no longer lives in a cloth tent. Do you know where he lives? In the hearts of people who believe in him. You can be God's home today. So, what is your mission? First, trust God even when the path seems impossible. The Israelites thought they were going to die in the Red Sea. But God parted the sea. Second, don't complain so much. The people complained about everything. Learn to be grateful. Third, obey God. Even when you don't understand everything. Fourth, Remember that God wants to live in you. Keep your heart pure. Before you go, ask your dad or mom to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell. Give us a big like. And comment below, what was the most incredible part for you? Was it the opening of the Red Sea? The manna falling from heaven? Moses' shining face? Tell me. And share this video. In the next episode, we'll see Daniel being thrown into a pit full of hungry lions. How will he survive? You can't miss it. See you on the next adventure. Bye bye.